Welcome back, gentlemen. I have a few notes that I was working on this morning in a Weatherspoons that I thought would be very valuable for you to hear on the subject of thumb pulling and some advancements that I have become sensitive towards. I have a couple notes here. I hope you don't mind me reading from my notes. And if you do mind me reading from my notes, I don't really care. So the purpose of thumb pulling, if those of you who are uninitiated to that very curious term, thumb pulling, pulling with your thumbs, face pulling, maybe one that you're more familiar with, is a process by which we expand the upper palate by use of, you guessed it, the thumbs. Now, the purpose of this, I believe, is fundamentally in a functional sense, right? Now, the aesthetics will come into it, and I will touch upon that later, as well as the roof of my palate. A terrible, awful joke. The point I'm trying to make here, gentlemen, is that you may not have a lot of room for your tongue to sit very comfortably in your mouth. And one of the mechanisms by which you can create more room in the top third of your mouth is by expanding the palate by means of placing forces on the soft palate by the thumbs. Now, the aesthetics part, there is a caveat to this. I'm 28 years old. Science is telling me that my skull has calcified, is ossified. There is no malleability in my skull comparatively to if I was, let's say, 25 and younger. I believe around 25, give or take a couple of years, is when the skull starts to ossify. Now, I've only just started to integrate, 3 minutes of thumb pulling every single day, fairly, with good intensity in the bath or in the shower, because I don't believe it's too onerous on your particular habit. I think it's also important to highlight that the potential risks of abnormalities in thumb pulling, if people are worried they'll mess up their faces even further than it already is. Apologies. You should be really placing a lot of your anger towards your mother and father, not me. It's their fault, really. But if you don't want to further facilitate this, then you should go easy. I believe a benefit of actually doing thumb pulling after 25 is because your bones have ossified, then this process is slowed down. So you're going to be able to tell if there's any changes or if you're going wrong. If you're pulling too much on one side or comparatively to the left side, if you feel like one eye is higher or lower, if you feel like a cheekbone is more flushed on the right side comparatively to the left, and you can kind of have some recourse as a consequence of this slower process. But yes, younger than 25, you will see progress far more quickly, perhaps in as little as 6 months. But again, the risk of facial asymmetries or the consequence of your right hand being more stronger than in your left hand. Don't know why that's the case. That shouldn't be the case. Get your mind out the gutter. That may happen. And the likelihood is this is heightened if the techniques are incorrect. Now, speaking of techniques, it's really important for me to stress that you are pulling against the palate, not the teeth. You can kind of see here in my mouth, never thought I'd be doing this, is I'm not pulling up against the teeth. I'm pushing the thumbs right back to the back third of the mouth where the soft palate is. Okay? At no point am I pushing against the teeth. Your teeth move as a consequence of you moving the palate, expanding the palate, not the teeth. The teeth will move. You'll get more kind of lateral growth and kind of flushing like this when the palate expands. But you are not, I repeat, you are not pushing up against the teeth. The placement should be on the back third of the palate. This area will be uniquely sensitive comparatively to other parts. You have the hard palate at the kind of front third of the mouth. But as you kind of venture back towards the throat, you are going to notice that very, very sensitive, very, very tender in this area. And this is where you are taking advantage of the soft palate. Now, I wanted to go through how I do this. I'm not going to be putting my thumbs in my mouth too much. Again, a uniquely ridiculous sentence I never thought would formulate in my years living in this earth. But I will start to massage the back third of the palate before I even start thumb pulling. You kind of want to warm up this area, bring your attention and intention into this area, and kind of prep this area for lateral and upper force. So I'm just kind of doing this. If you can kind of see, I'm just rubbing my thumbs against the side and just warming up this area. You should become uniquely familiar with warming up this area before putting any pressure there. And which is why I recommend you doing this in the bath or shower, because it can be very unhygienic to keep putting your hands in your mouth. Unless you do that already. And if you are doing that already, it's probably unlikely you're going to understand anything that I say in this video, because your IQ is south of, well, it's not 3 digits, is it? Anyway, digressing over that, once sufficiently familiar with this area, you can start to place some upper and lateral pressure on the soft palate. Start slowly, allow yourself to become familiar with the sensations. This is not comfortable. It is like exercise. You're going to feel a burning, a tenderness, a soreness, because this area is tender and sensitive. And as a consequence of that tenderness, you may only be able to do 30 seconds of medium to high pressure, and that's probably between 60 and 80% of your full effort in pulling. And I suggest you start, of course, off softly and ease as you go. I report, what's really interesting, and I know this sounds very self-explanatory. The irony is, it's not interesting, is it feels exactly as you would expect it would. You'll get a pressure kind of down the midline sutura of the skull. Some people report, like, if you can bring your sensitivity and your awareness right to the middle of your head, you can feel some pressure there. Sometimes I even get a little bit of kind of pressure like around the cheek area, and I think that's a consequence of the maxilla kind of, again, moving the sutures out there, and maybe I'm getting a little bit of sensitivity in that area, or it might be a placebo. I don't know. It's really important. I think I've stressed enough that this is something that I'm documenting. I would never say I was an expert, and do this at your own risk. If you mess up your face, it's your fault. Don't come blaming me. Or, you can blame me, but I'm not going to be able to do anything about it. Maybe push your head back together. And I'm being very facetious here. Now, I'll tell you what I do. I usually do 5 to 6 reps of 30 seconds. Which I believe is sufficient. It's important for me to say again that my bones are set. I haven't seen any visual evidence of heightened facial features. However, after a month, I do feel like my breathing has eased slightly over the course of my time doing this. But again, that might be a placebo. My attraction, however, I want to tell you my reasoning to this practice is because I believe there's good rationale to this. There is good reasoning. I don't believe it is illogical to believe that upper and lateral pressure wouldn't result in expansion of the palate, forward and lateral maxilla growth, which would flush out the cheekbones and give your eyes a little bit more support. I don't think it's illogical. And there's a subreddit on orthotropics. I always mispronounce that. I hope I nailed it that time. And mewing. Maybe go into this with some before and after pictures. I've used one on a previous video that is getting increasingly popular, which is why I want to capitalize on that momentum and share this particular video. So yes, I'm documenting this. Who knows, in 6 months, maybe I mess my whole face up. But again, I'm going slowly, just looking in the mirror every day, seeing if there's any major changes. I've got before pictures, of course, and I'll compare them. And go slowly. With anything.